treat. I'm going to be interviewing my really good friend Millie. Now, we've been friends for years and years, and we belong to a wonderful group at St. Pious United Methodist Church. It's called the St. Pious United Daughters of the Saints. And today, we are podcasting, and I thought I would record this for the video for today because it's very interesting to kind of see what women are really like. Well, maybe. Well, here's what we're doing. I'm asking her just what it's like to be in a group that's been established for so long, in a church that's been established, and just how that affects our lives. And, well, there's a lot of irony in this, and, well, you'll see. Enjoy. It's a long one, but a fun one. Thanks, Millie, for being on my podcast and for being in my video. So here it is, Nettie and Millie.
So thank you for wanting to join me on my podcast.
Oh, well, I am delighted
And
to be
and
here.
you know, one of the relationships we've had for a very long time is being in a women's group at a church.
Exactly.
And for the last how many years? It's going on a good 55, don't you think?
Yes.
1966.
And you remember some of the people that were there when it first started.
I got to do some math here. Where's my calculator?
Um,
1966. Where's my calculator? It's under my finance app.
Oh,
Okay, here we go. I'm really good at this. 2021, right? Minus 1966. 55 years. We have been friends this year for 55 years. And
can you even believe that? Can you believe it?
Okay. We were.
You know what? I got to tell you, you look fabulous.
Oh, well, thank you. Well, so do you. I mean, if we just
Well,
do something with that hair.
I don't know about that. This skin under my chin, it waddles, and it just drops and it just looks terrible.
Well, so you notice how I'm kind of sitting a little high up. I have this chair that will like drop me, and so I sort of make sure that the camera is looking down, because if you get the camera here.
Yeah, look.
Yeah, well, just say your goiter deflated. That's what I say.
My goiter deflated.
Your goiter deflated, and that's a good thing. So with the good thing about podcasts is nobody sees anything.
Yeah, I like that.
If I shake my head, they might hear my waddle flap.
Yes.
So 55 years we met in youth group. At St. Pious United Methodist Church. And so, we used to watch all these old ladies, that were older than us. And we called them the Blue-Haired Lady Society. Do you remember that?
I do, because we were really young. I mean, yes. We were just starting our families out.
Well, not in youth group we weren't. Were you?
Oh, I worked one Sunday in the youth group, and I came home and I just couldn't believe it. I kept telling my husband all the things those kids said. They're naughty.
Well, Millie, I think you're a little confused. I'm talking about when we were in youth group together in 1966.
Oh, yeah.
That's where we met. Oh, my goodness. You had me worried there for a minute.
Now I get kind of confused. Gladys, she was a troublemaker there, remember?
She was a real troublemaker. And, well, she wasn't. One of the things she said to us, actually, we probably should have taken to heart, because we were talking about the blue-haired ladies all the time.
Uh-huh.
Well, she was more inclusive. She reminded us some of them had purple hair.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
So at least she did that. But no, where is she now? She's just got that dull gray crap. Whoa, dull gray stuff. I don't think we're on the air. We are on the air. Hey, Jimmy, can you edit that out? Oh, yeah. Okay. Jimmy's right here on his iPad.
Hi, Jimmy.
Well, he doesn't want to go on camera because, then he'd have to get dressed. He's been in the same sweats since March 7th, 2020. Yeah. He even does his paper route on his bike with those same sweats, and I think, you know, that little Schroeder kid, was it a Schroeder? No, Pigpen. It's like, oh, 47-year-old paper boy going down the street in a cloud of dust.
It's his pandemic wardrobe.
Well, you can call it spandemic because it's everybody's wearing spandex. It's the only way to get
Oh, I
through
know,
the
I know,
day.
I know.
Spandemic. Oh, we could probably come up with a product.
Pandemic, yeah.
Millie, we could make money for the spuds. Oh,
Oh,
I
I
should
like
explain.
that idea because
I
we're always looking for ways to make money for our
yeah.
organization.
So let me take a second and tell the audience what we're talking about.
Okay,
So, like I said, we belong to St. Pius United Methodist Church for 55. Well, longer than that. We were baptized into that church, weren't we?
we
Well,
were.
we don't want to go that far, but it's
No,
longer
no,
than 55 years. Let's put
you're
it.
right.
And so there's always been the St. Pius United Daughters of the Saints for so many years, and
Oh my goodness.
they've actually been around for how many years? 175 years.
Oh my gosh, that is correct.
The church was founded 175 years ago, and they've been a church of service to all the saints in the world.
Ah, that is something.
So here we are now, after 55 years, and we belong to St. Pius United Daughters of the Saints. And
Right.
so I wanted to interview you a little bit about the ups and downs of being involved in an organization this long, and especially being in this bonded group of women who are out to save the world,
Right.
and in their wonderful way, and sometimes not so wonderful way. You know what I mean. So I'm going to interview you about that, Millie, and I'll just call you my co-host for the day because you know you know a little bit more than I do sometimes because you get the skinny from a lot of people. I don't know. Some people don't want to share it with me, but
Well, so they get a little, sometimes they don't like it. Yeah. Because I'll start, sometimes I have to admit, I start going down that rabbit. Is it the rabbit hole or the rabbit tail? Trail.
well, it could be either one because the rabbit hole goes straight down to you know where,
Oh, yeah, yeah. Well, I
and the
guess.
rabbit trail takes a long way around because sooner or later, if you follow that rabbit trail, you're gonna have to like scurry back to the hole and hide. Don't you think?
I think so.
That was really deep, Millie. I really appreciate that thought. I get that visual. So I think we'll start off. What do you think is the very best thing about belonging to a group like this?
I think the best part is having that spiritual connection that we don't always have that with the world. In non believers, you can have a good friendship, but you can't have that. This is a big word, intrinsic connection. And that means there is a level of authenticity to that you're not going to share with people outside God's kingdom.
It's sort of like siblings in a way, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
You trust people with your vulnerabilities.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's not, I mean, you soon find out that, we all have our foibles,
Yes.
but
well, then there's always one or two in the group where you kind of still wear a little bit of a mask because
oh,
you don't know what they're going to do with your vulnerabilities. They haven't quite learned yet.
I know.
Especially new members. It's been really hard to get some of our members to include new people.
Oh, I know. And I think about that and I think, if they were on the outside looking in, longing for that, and nobody even acknowledges them or sends out waves that they would be remotely interested in this person, that's kind of sad.
Yes.
because some people are seeking something more than what we can see.
That's so deep. That's deeper than the bunny hole. I see that bunny going down that hole and popping up on the other side of the world. That was so good. So, but I think we just touched on the best and the worst, because the worst is that you don't ever want to change a thing. That
Oh,
you think that it should stay the same way forever and ever. What do you think
oh.
about that, Millie?
I always have liked that because I felt more in control. But as I got older, I realized it gets stale. And you're not even seeing things that shouldn't be there. You're just so used to this picture that you have of this place
Right.
that you don't notice the things that are going wrong. And so I think it's important that you meet, you talk about, and you welcome new things. Now, do we have to do all that fancy new stuff and be hip, wow, and now? No,
No,
you don't have to do that.
I still want to use a tape recorder. But Jimmy won't let me. So I think what you might be saying is that we, instead of being stagnant, we should be magnets and attracting new people in, right?
Well, yes, that's
No
right.
thing. Oh, we should make T-shirts and make some money for Spuds.
Yes, it is.
Don't be stagnant. Be a magnet for Jesus.
It sounds like you said, don't be stagnant, be a maggot.
Well, that could be when we get the bad potatoes for the potato feed. Get lots of maggots then. You know, how are we going to get our money back? Sell the T-shirt. Oh, boy. Well, we're off topic there, aren't we? So there's kind of the best of things is that we form a bonded group, and we
Right.
trust one another, and we're able to talk about things
And
that we
try and make and build each other up.
and build each
Now,
other.
does that mean give him a bunch of, false praises? I mean, who's going to tell Myrtle Diefenbacher that she's beautiful? I mean,
Well, I think her apple pie, her delusions of having the best apple pie
oh
might
my.
be the
Oh,
well.
I can't even think about it without,
Bless her heart, you know. Well,
yeah.
talking about
God love her. God
talking
love her.
talking about maggots. I mean, if you're going to use homegrown apples for the apple pie for the spud feed, you better make sure they're not the ones with the maggots in them.
I know it.
Yeah.
I don't know if she can't see or she doesn't care.
I just
Or
assumed it had to
what?
be because she's on that protein diet.
Well, they do. They say that bugs and grubs and larvae all have a lot of protein in them.
Spuds with grubs. That's what we'll call it next year. Oh my goodness. We could just make so much.
Have a spud with grubs and what was the other thing?
I don't know, but if we just take a little bit of chili and add some rice and put that as a topping, don't you think that'd work? Oh, that could just be the catch this year. But
Yeah,
don't ever tell her that we
Oh,
used that
oh,
idea
I
from
won't.
we just
I do have her number right here, but I promise you I will not call her.
talk about going down the bunny trail. We just did that, didn't we?
No, I'm sorry. That was probably my fault, but
Well, I
maybe it
don't
was
know.
yours too.
Well, when you said maggots, I just kind of went with it. So can't help myself. So speaking of being rude, do you think that sometimes when we just talk like this within a group, we make jokes and we laugh and have fun, and we know none of us really means it.
Right.
And how does that really work in a group like ours, do you think?
Well, there's always going to be, as diverse as people are, so are senses of humor. Some people, it's really interesting. Things that I think are a hoot and a half. Somebody else, they just kind of look at me like, well, that is not funny. But I just kind of think that they're kind of narrow-minded. And we can't be so burdened and laden with guilt and the whole shamoo. So we have to have a sense of humor. So I think we have to give each other, because just because somebody doesn't like your sense of humor doesn't mean you're not funny. You
Right.
just, we just have to be open to allowing it. If you don't think it's funny, you don't need to get your panties in a wad over it.
That's
Like,
for sure.
remember that one meeting? I can't remember. I think you and I were saying something. We thought it was hilarious. I look around, I am getting these stares that, oh my gosh, I felt like running and hiding.
I know because, look, we used to sit in church together and kind of giggle and snort. I mean, it would be about something that wasn't so funny. Maybe, remember old Mr. Willis? He used to kind
Oh,
of toot in church. Well, everybody else acted like it was nothing, but you and I would start laughing and we couldn't
oh,
quit.
we couldn't, because he had an unusual toot, didn't he?
Well, especially because we were on those metal chairs, before we put the, well, pews in, no pun intended. And just, it just kind of reverberated. And I know that word from Jimmy talking to me about how I need to change the reverberation on my microphone. And so I'm thinking that's the word. It kind of like echoes and reverberates right through that huge empty chancel, because that was when we were in the fellowship hall before we
I
built the
don't.
beautiful new sanctuary. And Mr. Willis, oh, well, and if he'd just gone to the Spud feed and we had that little, closing gathering afterwards, oh,
Oh,
I wish he'd just not choose the broccoli, if you know what I mean.
yeah. Oh, no kidding. He hadn't. Yeah, he had
Yeah.
quite. He would have, if he could have tolerated it, he could
Mhm.
have been a real big hit in the
Yeah.
junior high group, because they would have a hootenanny, a
Yeah.
tootanny.
Wait, wait, a toot nanny. That's pretty good. I had a nanny who used to toot a lot. Think of it. So, well, I wonder now. Mrs. Willis was in Spuds at that time. We were in youth group, and she was
Right.
in Spuds. Now, just say Fred. I'll just use Fred. He's my husband, and he doesn't mind me using him as examples. Just say we're sitting in the church, and he lets one big. You know
Ooh,
that song
That's when Daddy let the big one.
right, right.
that song. I kind of love that song, and I giggle. And well, remember when I sang it at the talent show? There were some
Oh, I
people.
know. That was a good one.
Well, some people thought it was just kick her out of the church. She's talking about toots in church. Well, it's time to be real about stuff. But what do
Right.
you think might have happened to Mrs. Willis? Do you think anybody in Spuds at that time? I mean, people didn't always talk about things, right?
No.
Do you think? Well, isn't it interesting talking about toots has brought us to this really interesting part of our conversation? Deep. Like, wouldn't you say something to me like, "Did that really embarrass you when Fred tooted in front of the whole
Oh,
world?" Well,
oh.
wouldn't our group kinda sit and just keep going with it and giggle? I mean, except for well,
Well, now, if it was my husband, I would slug him and tell him to get out of there.
I know, or I'd tell him, "No, don't come until you've tooted it all out. You can be late." But we'd be able to talk about that, but poor Mrs. Willis probably had to go to Spuds and sit
Oh,
in
oh my gosh, that
probably
poor woman. Because
humiliating silence, like
he had his flatulence knew no boundaries.
no boundaries, and most likely it was a medical problem. We know that as adults, and I was gonna say mature adults, but well, whatever. So, but I think there's a difference in groups like this, and what other differences do you think? Like, are we just more gossipy? And I'm using that word not as a suggestion, but as a possibility, or what?
What I think is, we don't pretend to be, well, most of us, you and I sure don't, pretend to be holier than thou. And I think because of the time, at that time, people were gossipy, maybe even more than us, because they looked down on anybody who would not come to church or would not participate in the lighting of the Christmas tree in town, in the town square. And they were just ostracized.
Well, even if they wore their black patent leather shoes after, after Memorial
Day.
I mean,
or is that Labor Day?
Well, Labor Day is when you can start wearing black shoes, and so black patent leather was the medium.
Right.
Like you could sort of wear those both times, and that's how some of us poor families got away with it. Well, we always got white shoes for Easter. That was one of the best part, going to Leeds shoe shop and getting white
my
shoes.
Goodness.
And one year my sister got one, and you could buy the extra for $2.99. You could buy the extras, and she got the white pom-pom ball. It looked like a bunny tail. And she wore for Easter. I was so jealous.
Oh, I bet you were. I know that I was really into stuff like, things. And I've sort of let that go. But I don't know. I think they gossiped more. Don't you remember sitting there and you and I were looking at each other and thinking, why are you, a person of this church, doing this?
I wonder if it's because they weren't very open with one another. And these days, we're so open, almost to a fault.
Sometimes we share things and it's a little TMI.
Exactly.
I mean, like, we never know what Stella's going to do with what we say.
No, that's true.
But, she's new and she'll learn. And that's where I think one of the things that I love about our group is that we do have little sessions of learning, and it's not just the Bible study, because we have that.
Right.
But it's about real things happening to real people and how we respond.
Exactly.
And how to be kind to one another. And it's not, there's no politics about it. It's about how we deal with each other in situations, that are beyond our control sometimes.
We're all, God loves everybody. And he even has a very tender heart for those that are on the outside, because he's longing to make them a part of his family.
Yes.
I think too, we didn't ever talk to anybody when we really didn't have the communication available to us like we do now.
Well, that is true.
And so we talk a lot to one another. And I think, we get more accepting that way. But it also, for me, it reminds me I need to be more disciplined and probably not do that. Like when I was growing up, my mama was part of the group.
Right.
And
wasn't it fun that our mamas were such good friends too?
I know.
What if they had hated each other? That would have been hard. That happens in churches.
Yes, I know. They were great.
Yes.
They were fun. But my mom was pretty reserved, and she wanted to do the right thing, and she didn't want to look. I mean, you and I think sometimes we spend our life worrying about what other people were thinking about us.
You're right.
My mom that just wasn't a part of people's lives, because they had to work all the time.
Yes.
From the time they got up, they didn't have time for idle gossip. They didn't have time to even laugh. It was really was a miserable life.
Can you imagine our mothers sitting around texting each other?
Yes. Oh.
No, I don't think so.
Or going to the movies for a couple of hours and eating a whole large bucket of popcorn. My mom she didn't want to sit still. She got up at 4:30 every morning, and she was on her feet all day long.
Yeah.
Taking care of us.
Yeah. I think of my mother babysitting 12 kids, up to 12 kids, not all at once, before school, during school, after school kind of thing. Little babies up to, fourth graders, whatever. And her house was immaculate, and the kids were never neglected. We had just a schedule. And I
Right.
remember being home during the summertime, and it's just that was their calling. It wasn't just they were feeling bummed because they had to stay at home and while the
No,
husband worked, they didn't know any different, and they took pride in it. And, you know, that's how these groups started because they were the social outlet, but they still did a lot of service. More than a spud feed. I mean, we do
right.
more too, but we don't do as much because for so long, everybody worked outside the home.
I think it was a more accepted thing. You wouldn't find them going outside the church. The church was our social place,
Yes.
was our place of worship. It was it was the life of the community.
It was the life of the community, especially, in our town. It was a big town, and so the churches, especially at Catholic parishes, because you went to the parish within your community. That wasn't always true with like Methodists and others, but
Right.
you form a bond with families that you become lifetime friends. And within the church, our mission was, of course, to bring more people into the fold of Jesus. And that's basically it. And that's even evolved for us, that we do that without judgment in a way. I think one of the worst things about some of the uh, the societies, like we only were big enough to have one women's group, and some churches
Right.
are
And that
huge.
wasn't overly large.
Well, some of them had several groups, like the Dorcas group, Esther group, and they would have different missions. But then what would happen is it would form some sort of competitions.
Well, I agree with you there. And I think, once our church got so big, then it's like we wanted to divide them into groups, uh, smaller groups. And part of that's good, but in like groups. And
Yes,
so it was people that were similar, had similar places in our lives and
yes,
we were similar, I
right,
guess, and had a lot in common. And that's really not what God wants us to do, is to
right.
stick with those people all the time. He wants us to reach out to other people. And I think that's the problem with people now. They can't be with people that don't believe like they do. I mean, they
Yes.
just can't seem to do it.
Like, I don't want to be with you because you like to clap in church. Somebody said that to me once. You like to clap in church and hold my hand during the Lord's Prayer,
Oh, I
touchy feely
know.
stuff. And I go, well, it's up to you. You don't have to clap, and it doesn't bother me if you don't want to hold my hand. That's okay.
Right, right.
But I think the way we ended up, and the larger church said, have one group. So we have our spuds, the United Daughters of the Saints. But within that group, we have the prayer shawl group. We have the ones that want to help with the food pantry, our free meals,
Right. And
and
we have, yes, and we have people that are, uh, and, and that one's sort of multi-generational, the outreaches,
yes, yes, and
and
and even the prayer shawl group, because there are younger women that didn't learn how to knit or crochet,
right,
or even the quilting group.
right,
And some of these are old groups that happened even before our church started
right.
175 years ago, because the women would gather and do their, I mean, they were knitting for practical reasons, not
Oh,
because there
absolutely.
was a new yarn at Joanne's Fabrics.
Everybody broke their leg getting down there with a coupon.
That's right. Well, now you can do that on your phone.
Well, and I have a confession to make. They used to
Oh,
send out those little papers and flyers, and they always had Joanne coupons in them. And I would wait till it got dark, and then, they'd throw them in people's, like in front of their house. and I would kind of go and borrow a couple of those coupons.
Well, I'm sure some of those old bachelors don't care.
Well, that's true, probably.
So what else about belonging to a group like this, or it just overall the church? It's not the fashionable thing to do
No.
in society anymore, and we struggle, and sometimes you feel like you have to defend yourself because you're a churchgoer,
Well,
and
it's
but
a societal oppression. I mean, our culture uh, literally persecutes Christians, not in a real overt way, but they make fun of them all the time. They dilute the sanctity of people's relationships. They make,
mhm.
all of that kind of stuff. And they don't understand faith. They only think that the only person they have to answer to is themselves.
Yes.
And that's sad. That's sad.
And it's very interesting because, it's not just Christianity they're not choosing, it's any other faith form. And
Exactly.
when you have, well, Nettie's a little progressive in her thinking because I really feel like that when you center yourself, I mean, as a Christian, I believe that God is love, and God says God is in you and you are in me. In other words, love is in me because God is love.
He first loved us.
And he first loved us. And so, people get it down to, well, there is no God. So how can that be? Well, there is love.
That's
Know
right.
that there is love. And so, so I try to get them over the goal line by just saying, well, don't you want to live in love? And then it's kind of up to God to help nurture that. And because
Absolutely.
I there have been so many times when I've been told that I'm not a true Christian because I don't believe blah blah blah, and I can't live there because it's so isolating and it's exclusive living. You live in this exclusive place of I am a Christian and this is the way you have to do it. Well, there's guidelines, sure,
Right.
but I feel like you know God says there's nothing that can set you apart from me, and that's because he just
Jesus.
wants yeah, and because he wants you to come to him and say, "I'm sorry," or "I need help." Sometimes the "I need help" comes before I'm
Right.
sorry,
Right.
right? And I think what I love about our Spuds group is that we have a little bit of all of this. And,
Right.
we had this what church did she go to? Well, we have one woman who's married to a Muslim. And
Uh-huh.
remember, we asked, how do you make that work? And she goes, well, he believes in love as much as I do. We're working together on that. And, he believes the Old Testament and he understands Jesus as a prophet. Well, to me, that's way beyond the starting gate. And spiritually, they're in tune because they honor one another. And so I've been called a heathen for not trying to, change him.
Well, ultimately, we would we would like him to have a relationship with Jesus, but that's not going to be our work. Our work is to show him love
Mhm,
and show him that we respect him
mhm.
and and be kind.
Yeah.
That's our job.
What about this, Millie? You know, let's just put his name out there. We'll fake it. His name is Sam. Sam the Muslim.
Mhm.
Well, so you know how we always preach, and especially in our group, we always talking about this group is about being the hands and feet of Jesus.
Right.
Okay, so can you deny or can we deny that Sam isn't the ultimate giver of love to other people? So, am I going to be the judge or not? Because I think if I leave it up to Jesus, I think at the moment of death, when everybody think that's the end all be all, when we take our last breath. Now, and people disagree with me, and that's okay. But I just propose this idea that in between the moment your body shuts down, it's not your body that meets Jesus. It's your spirit and your soul.
Right.
And I would just
And
love
ultimately, we can, if we take God out of the picture of, you know, going to Him and just saying it's always just up to us, and He has a part in it,
a very active part.
a very active part, because ultimately He's the one, and
Mhm.
He wants that, so He'll do everything He can
Yes.
to get you in His arms.
Well, and we always keep God in that one box. And we've talked about this a million times that this is who God is. And if I were to list what God is to me, and you put your list there and we compared them, well, many things would be the same. But
Right,
others, our perspective on God, because of our interactions, or for some lack of interaction,
right,
is what makes up the list. But God is steadfast and there all the time and sees everything we do. And there are people who profess to be Christian, going to heaven, condemning others to hell. And that's all they do is
right,
condemn people to hell rather than work really hard to be a servant. And
right.
I think that we get in trouble when we try to predict whether somebody's going to go to heaven or not, when I know that God looks at somebody like Sam and says,
That's just not our place.
he's
But I do
my
feel
servant.
like you have to have a reasonable amount of, and don't get me wrong here. I'm not saying this is a rigid, but you have to have a sense of right and wrong. Because if there isn't any wrong, then there's no God. Because
That's a,
He is perfect and He is everything good and pure.
yes.
But that doesn't mean that you're gonna by gosh you're gonna make that person believe.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah,
And the
well,
more you push on some people, the further off they're gonna go.
oh, for sure. That was like my father-in-law, for sure. And I think that we forget that we strive for perfection and that it's never going to happen here on earth, but we
Right,
strive for it because it is the best. And so that means we're each on a journey.
right.
You and I are close and do so much alike, but your journey is different than my journey.
Everybody, yeah.
And when you look at it from an earthly perspective, as close as two people can be, even husband and wife, like Fred's interactions in the world are on in his business and on his phone and with his golf partners,
Right,
and he brings all those people's experience into his own. And I have my Spuds group and you and a few other friends and some of my outlets that Jimmy, spandex Jimmy. I I have perspectives that come into the making of who I am as this
right.
unique, unique child of God. And
Exactly.
so we can't dictate somebody else's journey. And instead of I remember when we had to live in that down in California for a couple of years and going to a church and how people would be condemned and ostracized because they not by the church but by a handful of
That have taken it upon themselves
yes
to be
to
the Holy Spirit and to
yes
be God. And you
yes
know what? That's not our job,
that one
because there's somebody better qualified
well yes
than us to do that.
if your mission is to make everybody perfect the way you think people should be perfect, you got a long, long road ahead of you because it's never going to work that way. And I just feel sorry for that little choir director. She was so cute. I got kicked out of the church because she had them sing the Lord's Prayer. Well, what's that? What is that?
That just seems so, just so incredibly wrong. There's nothing right about that.
Yeah, no, there's nothing right about that.
But that is the thing. You get denominations, and there's so many of them, and there's a lot of things that people have in common, but there is always something that is going to keep them. And sometimes it's dumb stuff,
Yes.
you know, like clothes that you wear or
or don't wear.
yeah, no kidding. I did see some young ladies
Oh,
that went up
yes.
to communion and their dresses were so short. I thought, oh, please don't bend over for crying out
Good
loud.
thing we weren't kneeling at the altar at that point. But I mean, there we go. That's one of the things that happens in Spuds. We'll come back and kind of talk about that. And there's always somebody that says, "That's not our business. Pray." Well, we're going to have to wrap up. Where are we in this? We talked about the best thing about being in Spuds and the church and the worst thing. So if you were to put this all in a nutshell, what are the things you would say to others about why it's so important you stay connected with the St. Pious United Daughters of Saints and the St. Pius United Methodist Church? What is it that keeps you here, Millie?
I think it's very important to worship with and have fellowship. We gotta help and support one another. That's so important. And like you said, arms. What's the other part?
Hands and feet. You can bring your arms along because of floating hands.
Your arms
Not a good
elbows,
picture, Millie.
and your kneecaps and your thighs.
Yeah.
Anyway, of Christ. That's our job.
That's our job.
And to go forth and to do that, and if we can share Christ's love, then I feel with each other as believers and with non-believers. But everybody has their battles. And I feel like being in a group like that, if somebody is hurting, then we can all kind of come together and offer encouragement to each other. And I think we have a unique thing in the church that people aren't going to find on the outside. They're going to find hostility on the outside. We have to have the things that Christ wants us to have, and that is to be like him to others. Love your neighbor as yourself, and love God. And show others. Show others. The
and Sermon on the Mount.
And I can't remember who said it, and if you have to, use words.
That's right.
St. Francis of Assisi.
Was that him? I thought it was Mother Teresa.
Well, Mother Teresa probably repeated it because she was younger than him.
He should have gotten a copyright on that one.
Well, yeah. One thing I think when you said being there for other people and encouraging others, it's having that respect for them and pulling together, because oftentimes the Spud's gone out into the community and helped people in need that have nothing to do with the church. And then, like you said, we show it. And it's like, if you are just being the hands and feet, whether your hands are floating or not, you actually are, you're teaching the gospel without preaching.
Exactly.
You're without judgment. And it's
without judgment.
Being kind, because that's what you would want.
Exactly.
Oh, what a good place to end that. It's do unto others before they do unto you. Well, I would say that in Spud's group. I shouldn't say that in public.
Do unto others before them.
Do unto others what you would want them to do unto you. And that's a big amen to me.
Amen is right.
Well, thank you, Millie.
For having me here today.
Oh, Millie.
Come back sometime.
Well, I think we should just make this a regular thing, and we'll talk on some different topics. And I'm just really happy to have you and have your perspective and really appreciate.
I love listening to you.
55 years
of friendship that's gotten us through a lot.
I believe that. Oh boy.
Okay, well, say bye-bye to everybody out in Nettie land.
Bye-bye. Au revoir. Tout à l'heure.
Oh,
Adios.
She speaks French. I'm like Miss Piggy. I love it when she speaks French. Okay, bye-bye now.
if you want to see more of these educational videos from Nettie, if you subscribe, then Nettie will be around for a long time. Well, please subscribe.